What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Media Club. This is where all of us at Introduce, well, most of us at Introduce Multimedia, sit down and talk a little bit about what we're working on, what has caught our attention in the media world, and obviously at the end we have a question. And so this question is going to be about our production process. What is the process involved in that? But before we get into all of that, don't forget to like and share this video, subscribe to it on YouTube, all that stuff, all that above. And if you do happen to miss this, you can always catch the replay, which will be on our YouTube channel and our blog starting on Mondays. But like I said, before we get into all of that, let us introduce ourselves. I'm Paul Schmidt. I'm the owner and creative video strategist for Introduce Multimedia. And I will go to my left.
Yeah, that's me. I'm James. I'm the creative live stream alchemist here at Introduce Multimedia. So I know I say this every week, but I do all the live streams. I also do the occasional video, and then the rest of the videos are down there with Nick.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Nick. I'm the creative video architect here at Introduce. Yeah, so I make all the videos that aren't live streams. Yeah.
Well, awesome. And welcome. Thank you again, all of you, for joining us live. We like to hear from you live. So if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to hear from us about anything that we're talking about today, or if you want to commandeer our Q&A section and not want to hear what I'm going to be talking about, but have a different question, do so. We're doing it live. So before we get into that, obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're working on. So what are we working on? Let's start with you, Nick. What is something, a project that caught your eye this week that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I guess this week I'll talk about Impression 5. We're doing another video for them because we have a retainer with them right now, so we're doing multiple videos for them throughout the year. And the one I'm working on right now is about their new exhibit that they just launched like 2 weeks ago. It's called How Things Are Made or something along those lines. I don't know if that's specifically what it's called, but it's all about kids getting hands-on experience with how things are made and different processes. So like things like molding and like things like cutting and different like engineering and mechanical things that a lot of kids wouldn't experience in like their daily life of just watching YouTube videos and things like that. So this like gives kids like practical hands-on use of a lot of cool things that they wouldn't normally experience. Yeah, so the video we just filmed, the opening with the ribbon cutting and just filmed a lot of kids, having fun at the event. So yeah.
Awesome. And this is like Nick said, this is an ongoing service with Impression 5, and it's really been wonderful to see Impression 5 because first of all, they're celebrating their 50th year, and second of all, they had a rough couple of years with the pandemic. So it's really cool to see this open up and bring the kids in and get that stuff going in real time, in real life. And it's just because Impression 5 is a gem in the community, really a very big tourist situation for Lansing, one of the few. And so, yeah, so that's really cool. I'm excited to see that video. But now we're going to move over to James and see what are the out of the numerous projects that you guys are working on, what is the one that caught your eye for this week? What do you want to talk about?
Well, so this week we had our new intern start. His name is also Nick. There's no nicknames yet for the two Nicks, but we're working on it.
I got it.
Yeah. But today, intern Nick and I recorded another interview for Downtown Lansing Incorporated's People and Places of Downtown series, which, if you don't know what that is, it is a social series that we are developing with them to pretty much showcase downtown, find out why people are excited about downtown, what they're doing downtown, what businesses are downtown if people don't know. And today's interview was Jen Estelle, and she is the head of Redhead Design as well as the owner of the Nelson Gallery downtown. Um, and what I love about these shoots today in particular was a learning experience because I was teaching our new intern our audio equipment and all of that, but I also let him get some shots on the camera and with the gimbal, so he was like excited about that and like getting different shots. But I also love it because these are about a 10-minute interview that we boil down to two or three extremely powerful statements that because the end product at max is 30 seconds. That's including the intro, that's including the outro. So you just have to boil down their entire interview into these two or three extremely powerful statements about themselves and about downtown. And it's just a really fun shoot for a really fun client, and it's our way of helping build back downtown.
No, that's true. I mean, and I like the fact that you rolled in. It's a twofold situation where it is um, a really impactful piece of media to help tell the story of downtown going forward, but also the fact that it also shows folks that when you do an internship here at Unaduce, you're thrown right into the fray on the team. It's like, okay, you're in, bye. It's like, and that's the whole purpose. The purpose is to create a situation where you, as an intern, you're not always going to do super grunt work. You're actually on the production. You're a team member, and that's how it starts. Um, I mean, I know that the only person that was probably completely thrown into a fray was Nick, who had no experience with us at all when he joined um, in the 2019. But and he's like the one. You're like the one person that never had any history with us at all before you took the job. And so, yeah, where everybody else has kind of worked up through internship to freelance to part time. It's just interesting. And yeah, and I thought that, and Nick seems to be the other Nick, the intern Nick. I guess we need to have a different name. So I don't know. So I guess maybe we should make that a campaign. What should the two Nicks names be? How should they be referred? And Big Nick and Little Nick just doesn't compute. No, that
Intern Nick and regular Nick doesn't really work either because that's just
unleaded Nick,
what they're doing.
unleaded.
Unleaded.
Hey, gas is timely subject. All right. Well, that's cool. Thanks for talking about that. That's just some interesting stuff, and we're really looking to do. Yeah, those are two great projects, great clients. Downtown Lansing Inc., Impression 5. So if you haven't checked out any of their stuff to this point, I highly recommend it. Highly recommend coming to downtown and seeing some of the businesses that we've covered so far. Obviously, Jen's video was just recently shot, so that one's not out yet, but it's not supposed to be out till like the beginning of July. And so we do have Capital Hippie and a novel concept on DLI's social pages and website. So look for those. Those are the two that we have completed thus far. And this is an ongoing series that we'll go into next year. So there you have it. Now that we've talked about what we're working on, let's talk about what media caught our eye this past week. All right. So I don't know who went first last week. So I'm going to go with
You
Nick.
went first last week.
Okay, well then I will say Nick will go first this week because he has probably the most timely of all the media that we're going to be talking about.
Cool. Yeah, so this week I'm going to be talking about Lightyear. It's a new Pixar animated movie based on the Toy Story character Buzz Lightyear. Yeah, so a little backstory on me. I have two small kids. Uh, One daughter is 6, so this is like perfect age for her. And just in general, having kids, I feel like I watch a lot more animated movies, a lot of kids movies. So inadvertently, I feel like I've kind of like found my niche like in movies, just because that's the most types of movies that I watch lately. So like, if you have any questions on like animated kids movies, like I got you. Like, Wolfwalkers. If you haven't seen that, like that's a really good one from the past couple of years. But so anyway, that's why we saw this. I also love the Buzz Lightyear character. Growing up, I'm child of the '90s. Toy Story for me was like the movie. And Buzz Lightyear specifically, not just one of my favorite animated movie characters. Like film, one of my favorite characters in film is probably like Buzz Lightyear and Woody, and just yeah, love Toy Story. So I was pretty excited for this. Going into it. A couple weeks ago, like when I started hearing reviews, I heard a little more muted reviews, so my expectations were lowered a little bit going into it, and I think that helped because yeah, this is not like top tier Pixar. This isn't Coco levels, but I think if you go into this just expecting like a good sci-fi movie with just really good animation, I think you'll have fun with it. It's a lot more somber than you would expect from a Buzz Lightyear movie. I think if you look at like the cartoons, like the Buzz Lightyear cartoons, and even like how the Buzz Lightyear character is portrayed in Toy Story, this doesn't really line up with that. And I mean, it makes sense because it's kind of his origin story, in a way. So he's not like the do-gooding, Superman kind of character that you would expect. It's a more kind of muted, somber story. I feel like it has more in line with movies like Interstellar or like Ad Astra than it does with like a rocking action movie. So that was interesting. But yeah, overall, I really liked it. Yeah, like I said, yeah, not top tier Pixar, but if you go in just expecting mid tier good Pixar, it definitely satisfies that. And I know Paul also watched it. So yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on it, Paul?
Well, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said. I liked well, I think this franchise, I've seen all of them in the theaters. I didn't realize that. I've seen all of them, Toy Story 1 through 4 and Lightyear, all in the theaters. And so um, I can't say I grew up with these characters, but it's been like a almost 30-year run for this franchise alone. And I would agree with the story. I don't think if you're going to go in looking for some of the narrative excellence of like Up or Coco or anything like that, that's not what this is. This is it's really boiled down to the Toy Story frame. I agree with that. And so what that means is, even though Toy Story 4, was it 4, 3 or 4? One of those two, it was pretty heavy. No, 3. It was Toy Story 3. That was the heaviest one.
Yeah.
And so it leans kind of that, but like Nick said, I think it does lean more towards a fun sci-fi film that's just it's solid. And you're not going to be disappointed with it, but you're not also going to be like, oh, rah rah rah. It's not going to wow you. So I agree. I think that's a solid assessment.
Yeah, and I do want to really quick touch on, because if you've seen like news about it, like you probably heard about there's like a gay kiss in the movie.
I
And
forgot all about that.
yeah, like it's literally like a 2 second kiss and a montage. So
Yeah.
like anybody who like has issues with it like is insane. Yeah.
To be honest, I mean, it's so insignificant in that in the way that it was put in there in the movie. Like you said, Nick, is like barely a blip. I didn't even remember. So
Yeah.
yeah, the folks that nitpick that are really not paying attention to the movie as a whole.
Yeah.
So, all right, James, why don't you go? I'll wrap it up.
Okay, yeah. So, Kay and I recently finished watching all of the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel that's out. We've been watching this for probably the past month or so, just off and on. It stars Rachel. I'm gonna ruin this. I am totally gonna ruin her last name. Rachel Brosnahan. Brosnahan. Anyway, that's her.
That's
She's
actually
Mrs. Maisel.
pretty good. That's actually how you pronounce her last name, Brosnan.
Yeah. And then Alex Borstein is her manager, who is probably my absolute favorite character on this entire show, because she's very no nonsense. She's a woman manager in the 1950s and 60s who only has one real star, and that's Mrs. Maisel. And that's her first client. And then it also stars Tony Shalhoub, also known as Monk. He plays Miriam's father, and then Kevin Pollak is in it as well. He plays Moish Maisel, who is her father-in-law. Now, I'm going to give you a quick rundown on just the first episode of this show and explain why I like it so much. It starts with Mrs. Maisel trying to help her husband, Joel, launch his comedy career, and then she finds out his entire act is stolen from an up-and-coming comic. This is all in the first episode. From there, he decides he's had enough of this. He leaves her and her 2 young children in their apartment after packing her suitcase with his stuff. And she puts the kids to bed and gets near blackout drunk and goes back to the comedy club. This is where she launches her own career as a stream of consciousness comic, where she just says what's going on in her life, how she processes things. She uses the stage as if it's a therapy couch, and it's amazing because every time she starts in on these things, you can't tear your eyes from the television. You just can't. She just commands the screen. This screenshot is actually from season 4, where she's transformed a club into like her own personal club, and it's amazing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The first episode ends with her actually getting arrested for public indecency for swearing on stage and possibly taking her shirt off. It's been a while. I don't remember. But she gets arrested because this takes place, the first season takes place in 1959, and the rest of the seasons take place in the 1960s, the early 1960s. But all of what I just talked about, for the most part, is in season 1, episode 1, and there are 4 seasons of this amazing show with some of the wittiest and tightest writing I've ever witnessed. On top of that, this show utilizes the camera in a way that, like, I'm trying to think of how to put this. If you saw, what was the Hugh Jackman movie with where he was P.T. Barnum and how they incorporated the cameras into the dances?
The Greatest Showman. Yep.
Greatest Showman. Yeah. They do that in this show from the get-go. They utilize, I'm imagining drones because there's no way it's Jib, and they just like zoom in over the audience around her to show you what she's looking at, the lights reflecting on the lens, and it's just that the cinematography in the show is unreal. It's just so good. She starts getting involved in politics. Her dad goes back to his roots when he was a kid. He becomes a socialist again. The show is just wild and amazing, and I'm gonna say right now they're already filming season 5, and I can't wait. We didn't know going into the show, Kay and I did not know that season 4 had just premiered. We thought we were hopefully getting another season soon, and that is not the case. But I will say that on this podcast, this has probably been the best show I've reviewed on this podcast.
Nice.
Wow.
And that's including Bridgerton, that's including Black Mafia Family, definitely including the wrestling show whose name I can't think of right now. This show's incredible. I don't know how I slept on it for so long. I don't know how you haven't even seen it, Paul, because it is everything you like in film.
All right. Well, I will have to change that. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Well, that's great. Well, I'm going to switch it up and talk about a podcast again. So, this podcast, well, obviously you can see the name. Well, no. Those who are just listening, it's The Experiment. And this podcast was absolutely incredible. What it basically was about the tagline. Really, well, let me read what it is. It says, each week we tell the story of what happens when individual people confront deeply held American ideals in their own lives. We're interested in the cultural and political contradictions that reveal who we are. And they talk about everything from, Uyghur immigration to a certain part of the United States that is constitutionally like in a dead zone, or in a dead zone constitutionally. There's like a four state situation in which the Constitution does not apply in our United States. They talk about that. And the reason why they found that was because somebody shot a animal he shot it from one side of the park, and the animal died on the other side, and it died in this area that was not protected by the Constitution. It was weird. It was like, so it was all of that. Plus, they had a 3-part series on spam and the strike, the workers' strike with the Hormel company, which makes spam in the 80s. I didn't know about. It was just, I highly recommend listening to this. And fortunately for everybody listening to this, you can catch the whole thing because The Experiment is over. I'm really bummed because it was so interesting to learn different aspects of how our country, like it said, how our country affects different people different ways. And it just was really a cool storytelling venture that you learned about different cultures and different situations that you would never imagine happening because, sometimes our laws and sometimes our cultural boundaries don't quite intersect. And it's about, okay, if they don't intersect, what happens? And this is what this whole podcast was about. So I highly recommend listening to these. Of course, like if any long form podcast, some episodes are better than others, but for the most part, you're going to learn something out of each one of the episodes, something you never knew happened, whether it's a historical event, or it's a weird law, or or a cultural situation that you had no concept of. And so yeah, it's just really good. Really highly recommend it. Good listen, and I'm going to miss it on a weekly basis. So anyway, that's that part. Now it's time for everybody's favorite part. I know that I'm conjecturing on that, but it's about the Q&A.
The Q&A. I think I have a thing for this. I do. Sorry, I was in the wrong tab.
All right, this Q&A actually comes from last week when we were going to do the Q&A, but James and Nick got kind of took over the show, which was fine because I learned a lot about something I never knew about. I was like, Summer Game Fest? That was the first time I've ever heard of Summer Game Fest because I'm not a gamer. So anyway, but this question was posed to me not too long ago, actually by 2 or 3 people over like a 2-week span. So I'm like, well, maybe I should talk about this on our live stream. And that question is, bam, what is our process for video production? And which is, this is the process that I developed. It wasn't something that I copied. It was something that helped me organize how we do things. And then it helped me show the folks that were coming in to, like James and Nick. It showed them exactly, well, kind of like a framework to work from. And so basically let's say we get a random email, or a client wants to do a video. The first thing is, or a project, let's say project, because sometimes they could be a live stream or live video situation. So we get that call. The first thing that we do is talk. If we can, we send them our production planner. We have one for live streams, and we have one for video production. So we send that to them. They fill that out, and then we see that, so that when we connect with them, we have most of the idea down right there. And then depending on, from there, depending on, then we work up a quote after we talk to them. After we have that conversation, we work up the quote, and depending on the cost, a formal contract needs to be written, or we can be just stuck with the quote. And then from there, we start scheduling the shoots, and so we try to work that out, and it will vary depending on the scope of the project, because like a 3 to 5 minute project is going to have more moving parts than like maybe a 90-second project or a 1 minute project. It's not always the case, as we know that sometimes it's hard to wrangle folks. But for the most part, when it comes to the projects that we do, we try to steer people to certain frameworks, such as if you're going to do anything 90-second and below, we limit it to 3 interviews, tops. We can do it with 2, we can do it with 1. However, we try to limit it to 3. That way, it gives the ability for the folks that are in the video, a little bit of room to breathe. For those that are in longer form videos, sometimes you need multiple voices beyond 3 to help share that story. However, as Nick completed a 7-minute video, and I believe there's only like 3 or 4 interviews in that, and it was still a really engaging video, but it's because of the way the content was developed. So, okay, we get the request, we get the planner out, we get the quote and the contract out, we schedule it all the time, but we also work with the folks to develop who's going to be in it, where is it going to be, all that. So we help develop the story from there, and our whole theme is to, like, have it all encompassed. And so from there, it goes into the editing phase, and we usually have a first cut done within 2 to 3 weeks. It goes through an internal editing process, and our estimating, it sees all of our eyeballs first, and then it goes to, so it actually goes through maybe 2 versions before it goes to the client for their versions. And when it comes to some of the projects we do limit the revision process, because we want to make sure that we don't go over budget. And so depending on the scope of the project, it depends on how many revisions you get. And then from there, it's ready to ship. And so, and with that comes a thumbnail, it comes the captions and stuff like that. So all of that is all encompassed. So that is basically our process from beginning to end. It's a very streamlined process, so we all know, and not only that, but we know where things are in our project database as well. So where, what's the next project that needs to come in, what is the due date, all that stuff. So yeah, that is it. In a nutshell, our process. If you have any questions about that process, please drop me a line. Or if you have questions about doing a project, drop us a line. As you can tell, it's right here at the bottom, www.introduce.com. That's where you can find all of us. And also, this is the end of our show. So we really thank you for tuning in and or watching the replay. We really appreciate it. Once again, give us a like, give us a share it with your community about all the things that we talk about. We want to see you at the next one. So please tune in live. It's best if it's live, and then you can join in the conversation and the moment. But until next week, when we come up with the new stuff that we want to talk about, go to our website, join our email list, all that stuff. Appreciate it, and we will see you in 7 days.